Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Patterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
Okay, our next poet is Ruth Stone, and Ruth is the author of Simplicity, which was published by Paris Press in 1995, Who is the Widow's Muse, Yellow Moon Press, 1991, and Secondhand Coat, Poems New and Selected, published by David Godine in 1987, and reprinted by Yellow Moon Press in 1991, among other books that were published earlier. Ruth has won the Whiting Foundation Award, the Patterson Poetry Prize, the Delmore Schwartz Award for Poetry, and for Who is the Widow's Muse, the Best American Poetry of 1991 award. Ruth is also a professor of creative writing at the State University of New York at Binghamton, but that's not enough to say that about Ruth. I have to say that I think Ruth is one of the most unique, original poets writing in the 20th century, and that her work will be read 1,000 years from now, and I think you'll agree. Let's welcome Ruth Stone.
It was a total delight to hear you. I thought I was the only one doing this. You know, I've had men get up and walk out when I was reading. It's wonderful. I have Poultry Factory poems. I wasn't going to read it, but I'm going to read one. If I can find it. Wait a minute. Where's that other book? Oh, here it is. All right. Poultry Factory, let's see, where is it? I gotta find it. Let's see, can't remember the name of it. Oh. Some things you need to know before you join the union. Yeah, that's it. 49, okay. Wonderful poems. Yours, wonderful. Some things you'll need to know before you join the union. At the Poetry Factory, body poems are writhing and bleeding. An angry mob of women is lined up at the back door hoping for jobs. Today at the Poetry Factory, they are driving needles through the poems. Everyone's excited. Mr. Povis himself comes in from the front office. He clenches his teeth. Any more wildcat aborting out there, he hisses, and you're all blacklisted. The mob jeers. The anti-war and human rights poems are processed in the White Room. Everyone in there wears sterile gauze. These poems go for a lot. No one wants to mess up. There's expensive equipment involved. The workers have to be heavy, very heavy. These poems are packaged in cement. You frequently hear them drop with a dull thud. Poems are being shipped out by freight car, headed up the ramp. They can't turn back. They push each other along. They will go to the packing houses. The slaughter will be terrible, an inevitable end of overproduction. The Poultry Factory's GNP, their shelf life, will be brief. They're stuffing at the Poetry Factory today. They're jamming in images saturated with as and like. If a line by chance explodes, there's a great cheer. However, most of them don't explode. Most of them lie down and groan. In the Poetry Factory, it's very hot. The bellows are going, the pressure is building up, young poems are being rolled out, ready to be cut. Whistles are blowing, jive is rocking. Barrels of thin words line the walls. Fat words like links of sausages hang on belts. Floor walkers and straw bosses take a coffee break. Only the nervous apprentice is anywhere near the machines when a large poem seems about to come off the assembly line. This is it," the apprentice shouts. "Get my promotion ready. APR, the quarterlies, a chapbook, NEA, a creative writing chair, the poetry circuit, Yaddo." Inside the ambulance, as it drives away, he is still shouting, "I'll grow a beard, become an alcoholic, consider suicide." And I want to add to something that Noel said, and that is, when I was young, and better looking than now, men used to say to me, "You write like a man, you don't write like a woman," you know. That was a compliment. I never wrote like a man in my life. And it's marvelous to, there's another poem I want to read. Wait a minute. You caused me to change my program. Let's see. I wanted to say, let's see, where is that poem? Let's see. It's that one about, oh yeah, it's an earlier one. You know, Cox and Mares is the name of it. Cox and Mares, she has 76. Cox and Mares. Every man wants to be a stud. His nature drives him. Hanging between his legs, the heavy weight of scrotum. He wants to bring forth God. He wants God to come out of those common eggs, but he can't tell his cock from a rooster's. However, "I'm a horse," he says, prancing up and down. "What am I doing here in the hen house?" Diddle-you, doodle-doo. In this fashion, he goes on pretending that women are foul and that he is a stallion. You can hear him crowing when the wild mares come up out of the night fields, whistling through their nostrils in their rhythmic pounding and the sound of their deep breathing. Okay. Let's see. Which book? This one. This one? Yeah. This is called Against Loss. That time at the downbeat, Billie Holiday, "Oh, nothing is succulent and sweet anymore. We drank so much." This was before the war, when we were renting rooms for the weekends and you watched me brush my hair, tickling your long fingers down my back. I sometimes hear the trombone and sax and drums, the wobble of spinning glass above the lady's room where she was upending a little toff of medicine out of a bottle. I mean, Billie Holiday spoke to me down there. She said, "I've got a bad cough," like an apology, and I remember her. Memory becomes the exercise against loss. Later, when we were naked on the bed, and that tremble of heat lightening along the muscles, you began the slow measures of Dover Beach in the only voice, "Ah, love, let us be true to one another." And this is called Plumbing. Plumbing is so intimate. He hooks up your toilet. He places a wax ring under the vitreous seat where your ship will go. You are grateful to him. He is a god with wrenches, a quiet young man using a flame torch. He solders the joints. He crawls through your dusty attic over the boxes of doll furniture, the trains, the ripped sleeping bags, the Beatles posters, the camp cots, the dishes, the bed springs to wire up the hot water tank. And you admire him as you would St. Francis for his simple acceptance of how things are, and the water comes like a miracle. Each time in the night, with your bladder full, you rise from the bed, and instead of the awful stench of the day before, and perhaps even the day before that, in a moment of pure joy, you smell nothing but the sweet mold of an old house and your own urine as it sloshes down with the flush, and you feel comfortable, taken care of, like some rich Roman matron who had just been loved by a boy. And this is for 8 women. Gender loyalty, alien to the pits and ducts of ourselves. How to unscrew this pattern. Now here's another matter, the season of bagworms, and yet the moths were so random, so azure. One lives alone out of circumstance until the face in the multiple mirrors is sourdough full of its own gas. The ocean is near, swallowing everything, a little cup of water moving along the galaxy. In Morocco, my child goes down to the beach toward evening. She forgets her tormentor, the headmaster's wife. The ocean takes her, the broth of itself flowing inside her. She rests with her feet in the scallops of water. I cannot consider Kana, Alice, or Shoko without Verlaine, Basho, or Connie Smith. What is this pattern in the light of bagworms? Nevertheless, the mornings here are a sweet shock to the blood. The light as it falls on the louvered windows, a pattern of slits, and above that the balconies. For a short time you are a stranger, then the vision fades, then you become the door opening and closing. In the mountains on my way home from the village, I would pass my sister's grave. Embalming fluid is pink like antifreeze. How red she looked in the casket. Next year her gravesite caved in. She stood on her head in the box. The sexton dumped in more dirt. Dirt, dirty. Soil is so useful. We track it in. The white carpet grows yellow. Down here in the south, along highways and boulevards, crepe myrtle. I am a stranger crossing the bone bridge to meet the other. Our skulls shine like calligraphy in a longed-for language. And this is called The News. What have you to say to that contorted, gunned-down pile of rags in a road, possibly nameless, even to the one who throws it on a cart and pushes it away? The discarded New York Times is wrapped around your garbage, and now wet on the scene still from someone's news camera, stained with scraps from your kitchen. And whose illusion, that woman running with the child, already struck, the machine gun crossing the line of her body, yet she does not fall, although she is already dead. Her history written backward, there is no time to weep for her. This was once the snot of semen, the dim blue globe of the egg moving through the fallopian tube, that single body casting itself into the future. This is called Things I Say to Myself While Hanging Laundry. If an ant crossing on the clothesline from apple tree to apple tree would think and think, it probably could not dream up Albert Einstein, or even his sloppy mustache, or the wrinkled skin bags under his eyes that puffed out years later after he dreamed up that maddening relativity. Even laundry is three-dimensional. The ants cross its great fibrous forests from clothespin to clothespin, carrying the very heart of life in their sacs or mandibles, the very heart of the universe in their formic acid molecules. And how refreshing the linens are, lying in the clean sheets at night when you seem to be the only one on the mountain, and your body feels the smooth touch of the bed like love against your skin. And the heavy sack of yourself relaxes into its embrace. When you turn out the light, you are blind in the dark, as perhaps the ants are blind, with the same abstract leap out of this limiting dimension, so that the very curve of light, as it is pulled in the dimple of space, is relative to your own blind pathway across the abyss. And there in the dark is Albert Einstein, with his clever formula that looks like little mandibles digging tunnels into the earth and bringing it up grain by grain, the crystals of sand exploding into white, hot, radiant turbulence, smiling at you, his shy, bushy smile along an imaginary line from here to there. This is called The Sperm and the Egg. The sperm hate the egg. They are afraid of it and ogress. They clot the hot red anteroom clinging to the walls. She is blue and pulsing. They are small and inadequate and lose their tails. Their chlorine milk begins to spoil. But on the journey, when the shudders swept them into an excited knot and expelled them all together, early sight scattered ahead of them. They traveled like a shower of comets. It was as if they were the universe. The egg puts out her slimy pseudopod and takes the sperm into the jelly. The sperm is hysterical. Now the egg is busy changing shape. The sperm does not want to be pulled apart like into strings. "Don't unravel me," it cries. The egg does not hear it. Deep inside the sperm, a seething hatred for the egg. "When I had my tail, I was free," the sperm cries. It remembers the ultimate vast trajectory. It remembers them all crying, to be or not to be. Okay, this is called trash. You want to forget it. Like you want to forget those women of no particular age living on the sidewalks, bloated trash bags, display of matted heads pulled down into plastic collars. Like those 3 gray elephants you saw one day in late November through a blur of snow, standing in a stripped cornfield outside Indianapolis, left behind when the failing circus sneaked away. And this is called Sleeping Beauty. Like I told Lorette, what's all the fuss? It isn't as if we don't have the same old house. Last summer we biked cross-country, Mom and I. The others went to Granny's. It took all summer. We biked Oregon to Denver, back roads all the way east, camped out. It was something Mom wanted to do. Here's Mom, 45. The divorce goes through. Mom gets custody of all 8 of us, so what's the fuss? Dad's this charismatic math professor. He can't help it. I love my dad. So what? We backpacked. Mom lost 30 pounds. I lived on trail mix. Makes me sick to think of nuts. Mom was crazy. She had this map. I mean, she wouldn't ask. We'd get lost. Bears, rattlers, just the 2 of us in a nylon tent. No sweat, Mom kept saying, no sweat. She wouldn't relax. Wanted to put more miles on. Hazel's really sweet. You know her florist shop. It's not her fault, she and Dad. Mom's always been so dumb. I mean, she doesn't even watch TV. Always doing laundry, PTA. I think everyone knew but Mom what was going on. Not me. I'm not like my mom. We never really got along. Does my mom read? She's a martyr. Martyrs don't read. I read Danielle Steele books, and hey, I read Stephen King too. Mom has not taken care of her teeth. She's still got them, but they overlap. I wore braces. I suffered for my teeth. I'm like my dad. He lets me babysit the new kid. It makes Mom so mad she gets pains in her chest. Now Mom's into karate. I'm so embarrassed. We've got a lot in common. This is for my dead red-haired mother. I loved a red-haired girl. Freud knew it was a wicked thing to do. This is how all poems begin. Sometime after the age of 2, I beat the atom in me black and blue. Infant, wicked infant, I threw my love outside and grew into a bride. You and I, reflecting in our bones the sea and sky, we dressed ourselves as flesh. We learned to lie. Dearly beloved, forgive me for that mean and meager self that now would mingle, but must first die. This is called Coffee and Sweet Rolls. Wait a minute. Yeah, I was going to read some of these too. I said, okay, Coffee and Sweet Rolls, okay. When I remember the dingy hotels where we lay reading Baudelaire, your long, elegant fingers, the nervous ritual of your cigarette, you, a young poet working in the steel mills, me, married to a dull chemical engineer, fever of having nothing to lose, no luggage, a few books, the streetcar, in the manic shadow of Hitler, the guttural monotony of war, often just enough money for the night, rising together in the clanking elevators to those rooms where we lay like embryos, helpless in the desire to be completed, to be issued out into the terrible world. All night sighing and waking insatiable. At daylight, counting our change, you would go for coffee. Then, lying alone, I heard the sirens, the common death of everything, and again, the little girl I didn't know, all in white, in a white casket. The boy I once knew smashed with his motorcycle into the pavement, and what was said, made a wax figure for his funeral, came in to me. I had never touched the dead. Always the lock unclicked, and you were back, our breakfast in a paper sack. What I waited for with the tremor in your voice. In those rooms, with my eyes half open, I memorized for that austere and silent woman who waited in the future, who for years survived on this fiction. So even now, I can see you standing thin and naked, the shy flush of your rising cock pointed toward heaven as you pull down the dark window shade. This is called The Solution. My friend, the supermarket, talks to me through my friend, the television set. They tell me I am not lonely. Come to me, Super says. Have an electric clock and a big cucumber. Very cheap. You can set yourself to go off with the alarm. They take me in my sleep to the shopping plaza and show me temptations in plastic. All this can be yours, they say. Gorge yourself. Now, let's see, I was going to read some of these other poems, and then I was going to read, but I don't know how much time I have. Shall I just go ahead? Okay, I'm so glad you talked about Wallace Stevens and read things about, I've got a Wallace Stevens poem too. Words. Wallace Stevens says, a poet looks at the world as a man looks at a woman. I can never know what a man sees when he looks at a woman. That is a sealed universe. On the outside of the bubble, everything is stretched to infinity. Along the blacktop, trees are bearded as old men, like rows of nodding gray-bearded mandarins. Their second-hand beards were spun by female gypsy moths. All mandarins are trapped in their images. A poet looks at the world as a woman looks at a man. This is called The Dark. These are from my new book. It's not out yet. It's called Ordinary Words. Yeah. The Dark. In the dark of the moon, under the shadow of our local hydrogen fluff, I look out of my worn eyes and see the bright new Pleiades. My sister lies in a box in a New England graveyard. By now her eyes are smears of gristle, her little breasts are wizened flaps, but they're thriving in leaps and burning this nursery of stars, young in the universe and yet so ancient to us. At the start, without opticals, they were the seven sisters. We who grow old so fast may not perceive their turbulent birth. My darling suffered so, her cells bursting and burning, eaten alive. In this slow, terrible way, we come to know violent chaos at the pure, brutal heart. I better skip some of these. I think I'll just skip some. Let's see. I'll skip that. Male gorillas. At the donut shop, 23 silverbacks are lined up at the bar, sitting on the stools. It's morning coffee and trash day. The waitress has a heavy feeling face, considerate with carmine lipstick. She doesn't brown my fries. I have to stand at the counter and insist on my order. I take my cup of coffee to a small, inoffensive table along the wall. At the counter, the male chorus line is lined up tight. I look at their almost identical butts, their buddy hunched shoulders, the curve of their ancient spines. They are methodically browsing in their own territory. This data goes into that vast, confused library, the female mind. Relatives. Grandma lives in this town, in fact, all over this town. Grandpa's dead, Uncle Harry's brain dead, and them aunts, well, it's Grandma you have to contend with. She's here, she's there, she works in the fast food hangout, she's doing school lunches, she's the crossing guard at the school corner, she's the librarian's assistant, she's part-time in the real estate office, she's stuffing envelopes, she gets up at 3 a.m. to go to the screw factory, and at night she's at the business school taking a course in computer science. Now you take this next town. Grandpa's laid out neat in the cemetery, and Grandma's gone wild and bought a bus ticket to Disneyland. Uncle Bimbo's been laid up for 10 years, and them aunts are all cashiers in ladies' clothing, and Grandma couldn't stand the sight of them washing their hands and their hair and their pantyhose. It's Marine World for me, Grandma says. Oh dear. I know, but I shouldn't read my normal life, should I?
Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Should I? Well, all right. What was that first marriage? That modus operandi? Not convenience, no boredom, nothing less. The poisoned silver film of Indianapolis. After the wedding, you told me about your first sexual encounter with the boy next door. He threw you down and jacked you off because you were a virgin. Later, we heard his sister scream at her baby's funeral. It had eaten mothballs. She was so dumb, she didn't take it to the doctor. You killed thousands of pigeons, or was it starlings? You collected guns. You loved your fraternity brothers. You were by heritage Republican. You swore allegiance to anything I hated. In order to get a hard-on, you would dress in pink panties and tell me rhythmic jokes with lines like, "Want to buy a turkey? Your family was your folks." Anti-sensual Indiana dirty, what can I say? You were the normal man I was indebted to. You were my ticket to the county fair. You were the proof I was okay. Okay, and I'll read Patience, and then I'll read the other one. Okay, Patience. You hacked the firewood out of the stiffened snow. Winter demands a vital patience. Driven inside this narrow space, now you are splitting illusions. In the disordered room, the stove heats up, the temperature rises. Outside, wind saws through a nursery of trees. The trees, their white roots aching under ice, tubes of patience, cork, cambium, chains of cells, twisting, looping up stairways, terminal tunnels. Patient as the coral snake in the double sleeping bag with the newlyweds on their first night in the desert, with them inside their zipped bag. You read about them before you burned the paper. The coral snake, its small mouth, patiently, automatically trapped in that cloth of strangeness, working the venom into their flesh. Days later, when the police unzipped the bag to pull the bodies out, the coral snake was still there. As similar as one tree creaking against another, these blunders of atoms, these circumstantial crimes. While fixing your dinner, you thought about those newlyweds, hoping they died after their orgasm, or at its peak, that cosmic rush to the very edge, to the nothing that is. In itself, the orgasm, phenomena of blunders and patient violence, always comes with a little touch of death. All right, now I'll read, what was I going to read? Malvich. Yeah. Okay, I think I have it here yet. This is called Translations. 45 years ago, Alexander Mikhailovich Teritsyn, son of a white Russian owner of a silk stocking factory in Constantinople, we rumpled your rooming house bed, sneaked past your landlady, and turned your plaster Madonna to the wall. Are you out there, short, vulgar civil engineer? Did you know I left you for a Princeton geologist who called me girly? 10 years later, he was still in the Midwest when he died under a rock fall. I told you I was pregnant. You gave me money for the abortion. I lied to you. I needed clothes to go out with the geologist. You called me Kushka, little cat. Sometimes I stop by the civil engineering library where you sat with other foreign students. You were embarrassed my husband might catch you. He was in the chemistry lab with his Bunsen burner boiling water for tea. Alexander Mikhailovich Terezin, fig of my pallid college days, plum of my head. Did the silk stocking factory go up in flames? Did the German fox jump out of the desert sleeve and gobble your father up? Are you dead? Second-hand engine, formula, concrete. We were still meeting in stairwells when the best chess player in Champaign-Urbana went to the Spanish Civil War. He couldn't resist heroic gestures. For years, I was haunted by the woman who smashed her starving infant against the Spanish wall. Cautious stayed Mikhailovich, so quick to pick my hairpins out of your bed. Average lover, have your balls decayed? Mikhailovich, my husband the chemist with light eyes and big head, the one whose body I hated, came back in the flesh 15 years ago. He was wearing a tight Western shirt he had made himself. There wasn't anything he couldn't do. He talked about wine and cheese tasting parties. We folk danced at a ski lodge. So this is life, he said. He told my daughter he was her daddy. It wasn't true. You are all so boring. My friend from Japan, Kana Maeda, the scholar of classical haiku, whose fingers, whose entire body had been trained to comply, her face pale without powder, her neck so easily bent. After she died from the radiation, her translations of Basho were published by interested men who failed to print her correct name. So the narrow book appears to have been written by a man. Fated in these ways, she is burned on my flesh as kimonos were burned on the flesh of women in the gamma rays of Hiroshima. She wasn't one of those whose skin peeled in the Holocaust, whose bones cracked. Graceful and obscure, she was among all those others who died later. Where are you, my repulsive white Russian? Are you also lost? Pimpled, obscene boy, employed at an early age by your father, you pandered his merchandise on trays, using your arm as a woman's leg slipped inside a silk stocking with a woman's shoe on your hand. Do you understand that later I lived with a transvestite, a hairdresser who wore wigs? When he felt that way, he would go out and pick up an English professor. After we quarreled, I cut up his foam rubber falsies. I had a garage sale while he was out of town. I sold his mail-order high heels, his corsets, his sequined evening gowns. Those afternoons in bed, listening to your memories of prostitutes with big breasts, how you wanted to roll on a mattress of mammary glands. The same when Rip Hansen told me about the invasion of France. Crossing the channel, he saw infantry falling past him from split-open cargo planes, still clinging to tanks and bulldozers. Statistical losses figured in advance. The ripped-open remnants of a Russian girl nailed up by the Germans outside her village, also ancient, indigenous. But what can I tell you about death? Even your sainted mother's soft dough body, her flour-dusted breasts, by now are slime paths of microorganisms. Where were you when they fed the multitudes to the ovens? Old fetid fish eyes, did they roll you in at the cannery? Did you build their bridges or blow them up? Are you burned to powder? Were you mortarized? Did you die in a ditch, Mikhailovich? Are you exorcised? Poor innocent lecher, you believed in sin. I see you rising with the angels, thin, forgotten, dirty-fingered son of a silk stocking factory owner in Constantinople. May you be exonerated. May you be forgiven. May you be a wax taper in paradise. Alexander Mikhailovich Terezin. Thank you.
Where do you get the guts, the nerve to say what you want to say and not feel?
Well, I think that it comes from a sense of urgency. As you get older and you see that truth-telling hasn't been as much truth-telling as it should be, or maybe that it would be more useful to tell more of the truth. And I think that as you get older, you have more self-confidence about what you say. You know, you've lived a while. And I think that a made up, we live in, human beings tend to live in illusory existence anyway, in spite of all our claims to understanding reality. And I think that the truth is like a good shock. And I think poetry should, as well as be seductive, melodious, and beautiful, that it should have truth in it, because otherwise it has no deep meaning. And I think that all poetry, true poetry, comes up out of its own time, and the urgencies of the time in which we live. Everyone, almost everyone that lives, that is thinking, understands that we live in a rather urgent, precarious time, and the world, human beings, if they're going to pay any attention to poetry or the arts, they need the truth as well as the beauty.
What is it that keeps you so youthful and young? Tell me your secret. Tell me the fountain of youth here.
I didn't know I was youthful. I feel like I'm not.
Across in your poetry, it doesn't sound old. It doesn't sound dated. It doesn't.
No. I don't think people get old. I think your body gets old. I don't think that you yourself, unless you accept the limitations put on being old, I don't think people get old. We don't live long enough to get old. It's experience that would make you, I mean, ancient after a while, and we never get enough of experience or wisdom to grow really old. Really, I think most people die inside themselves as children rather than get old. They may look old.
Where are you getting your inspiration nowadays?
Oh, the world, life, human beings, sorrow, joy, the tactile, three-dimensional world, which I take time to look at because I think it's actually more real than the one-dimensional world of the computer or television, the real world. Many of my students live more in the one-dimensional world of film, and which is a nice art, than they do in the real world.
So what's life all about?
What's it all about? That's a great mystery, isn't it? What is life? Who knows? We didn't ask for it, and it's apparently well scattered out throughout possible places in the universe. But I'm not sure that the universe puts it number one. I would say the universe probably puts life down at the bottom of the heap, because most of the time I'm sure it gets destroyed. So that it's, in a way, it's a strange little miracle. Born of violence. Human beings and all living things show a lot of violence. The wonderful thing that's happened with the human brain is the possibility of making something more than violence out of life.
So most of us miss out, huh? So most of us miss out?
I don't think so. I think we all do the best we can. We don't miss out. We live the life. It's one way you can make your life thicker and more of it is by, it seems to me, reading from the hordes and hordes and hordes of people who have managed to get in the printed. We don't learn by memory anymore, by things being repeated by that way, but we do have it in the printed page or some way like that, and learning from everything that has been passed to us makes our life thicker and makes us more empathetic and also more aware of meanings. We make up morals so that we have meanings, and also to live by passing on language this way, we learn some of the dangers and some of the good things about life and how to handle it.
So now what would you say to someone who really... What would you say to someone who really, truly wants to write, who
was really, truly great, in what way?
Who wants to write, but for some reason they can't?
Oh, something for someone who wants to write? Aha, all right. I would say, for those who want to write, that reading is one of the ways that you can fill your mind with awareness of how it feels to be another living thing, another human being, and also with language. And then the other thing is to listen to your own mind, listen to what your mind says to you, and not be caught up in what you think you ought to say, but write down what it is you really perceive and hear coming from your mind, because we are experiencing everything from the time we're born. It's all going into our brains, and when we listen to our minds, some of it comes out, and it's very interesting.
Is there anything that you want to say to those folks about life or whatever? Is there anything
for writers?
Yeah. Who are listeners,
well, I think that every child, almost, with few maybe physical exceptions, the ones who can't grasp language, every child is capable of is born an artist of one sort or another. That's what human beings are. We're artists, and we have hands, and we have minds, and we have language. That I think that no matter how you use it, I know some people end up playing football with it and so forth, but then whatever way, you were born with these possibilities. It isn't a select number of people who are born as poets or painters or even football players. Almost everyone is born with a great ability. They only have to discover it.
So is it true, if you don't use it, you lose it?
Probably it atrophies, I would say, if you don't use it, yeah. And some people don't find out. Some people have found out that they were writers very late in life, It doesn't matter when you find out what you can do. It gives you joy. It gives meaning to your life, to give back to the world what came into you.
Cool. I think that's it.
Thank you.